Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. going down this weekend. Who wins and why? That's a question I posted on my Facebook page. Got a lot of answers, and I'm here to tell you you're all wrong. Nah, just kidding. I love all of you anyways. But I think one of the things we have to realize is that we're not talking about a prime Mike Tyson versus a prime Roy Jones Jr. at this point. As inspiring as these guys are, they're a combined age of something like 107 getting into this ring. But why would I care about this match in the first place when you have two old guys going at it? Well, you have to remember, in my lifetime at least, Roy Jones Jr. is probably the most talented and skilled boxer we've seen, and Mike Tyson is certainly the most intimidating one. And these aren't ordinary 50-year-olds either. They're coming in quite great shape. I'm not going to say the prime of their lives, but what they're able to put out there right now is nothing short of inspiring. Still, we're analyzing a match right now when they're not in their primes. We're just going to have to look at what's going on and what they're putting forth on this. And based on that, I'm going to pick a winner on this. I'm going to say Roy Jones Jr. takes it. That's to say if there even is a winner on this. There's some little bit of wonkiness going on with the type of rulings and what type of match this is going to be. The California State Athletic Commission won't sanction this as a boxing match, but the WBO is going to have some kind of judges ringside to declare some kind of title holder winner among the two. Are they going to wear headgear? Is this only a sparring match? Look, these are two guys that have been around for a long time, have a lot of pride. I don't think they're going to do anything fake inside of the ring. Furthermore, even if they had some shenanigans, what's the consequences of this? They're going to suspend him from never fighting again? Neither one of these guys thought they were going to fight before this match came up. But still, we got to analyze this logically and look at what we have in place with us right now as opposed to what we're reminiscing about. You know, when I talk about Tyson's prime, we're talking about close to 30 years ago. Tyson was possibly the most intimidating heavyweight of all time. You had somebody who had raw power, aggression, speed, defense. Guys were terrified before they even got into the ring with him based on his reputation. You're talking about a guy that instead of ring music came in with a sound of clanging chains one time. Now, I sincerely believe that Roy Jones Jr. is the most skilled boxer I've gotten to witness in my lifetime. Now, I know you might say Floyd Mayweather. I prefer Roy Jones Jr. And I might say Sugar Ray Robinson. I was born after his time. So Roy Jones Jr. is the most skilled boxer in my lifetime. So let me list out my reasons why I think Roy Jones Jr. should be the favorite over Mike Tyson on this match. Reason number one, recent activity. Mike Tyson's prime was probably 30 years ago. His last match was 15 years ago, and it was a loss. And what has he done since then? Well, he's made a couple of movies, he's done a road tour, he's reinvented himself, but spent very little time in the boxing ring. Roy Jones Jr., on the other hand, his last match was less than 2 years ago, and he won it. And furthermore, he's been very active on the boxing scene. He's mentoring a lot of fighters. Those skills are still sharp. Sharper at least in terms of Tyson's. Now, I'm sure that Tyson has skills that he hasn't forgotten from over a lifetime. But ring rust is a thing. If you haven't been in it 15 years, if you haven't been in a competitive match, if you haven't been working on those timing and skills and whatnot, those don't stay around after time. Those are road unless you keep those things sharp. Whereas Roy Jones Jr. has been keeping those skills sharper for longer. Now, a lot of people are picking Tyson as the favorite on this because they feel if he managed to hit Roy Jones Jr., that Roy Jones Jr. is going down, that you can't take Tyson's power. And while it's certainly true that power is the last thing to go on an aging fighter, I'll tell you what the first thing to go is your chin. And the fact of the matter is, it really doesn't matter who hits who first. We don't know what either of their chins look like, and Roy Jones Jr. actually has as much of a chance of knocking out Tyson with his power as Tyson has of knocking out Roy Jones Jr. with his power. The question then comes down to skills, timing, footwork, and defense, and who has better? Roy Jones Jr. at this point. People tend to forget that Tyson was actually an undersized heavyweight. Although he had devastating knockout power, he's not considered the heaviest puncher in the division. That honor would go to either Ernie Shavers or George Foreman, but he was more than likely to overwhelm you with volume and ferocity. In other words, he had to rely on other things other than his power to get through to people. I don't think he's used to being the smaller, less nimble person in the ring, though. Roy Jones Jr., on the other hand, has taken titles in 4 different weight divisions, and he's the only person to ever take a heavyweight title when he beat Eddie Ruiz, coming up from the cruiserweight division. Roy Jones Jr., on the other hand, has won 4 world titles in 4 weight divisions, and he's the only middleweight to ever come up and win a world heavyweight title. In other words, he's been dealing with bigger, stronger opponents for much of his career and still finding a way to win. We don't actually even know what the weight difference is going to be between Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. is before the actual weigh-ins on the fight. It might not be that much. Tyson got away with a lot in the beginning based on his intimidation factor and his reputation. A lot of guys were beat well before they got into the ring with him. That aura kind of diminished after the Buster Douglas loss, and it kind of declined, at least within the ring compared to his opponents, over some time. I don't think Roy Jones Jr. is going to fall prey to any of that. Now, Roy did make a quote saying he thinks he might have made a mistake in accepting this match. He's still going forward with it anyways. We don't know if it's actually his true feelings or if he's just trying to sell some tickets right now. One thing that Tyson does have going for him is crazy. You never know what Tyson's going to show up, what he's going to say, what he's going to do. Everything's unpredictable when it comes to Tyson. He's done a good job over the years of making himself more accessible, friendly. He certainly has a lot of wisdom to share on things such as fighting and life, but underneath it all, it's still crazy Tyson underneath. You see flashes of that every now and again. We'll see what comes out in the ring. So yeah, I'm watching this match with lowered expectations. Maybe a nice trip down memory lane. I'm really hoping that watching these two legends go at it one last time will kind of rekindle the same feelings that I had when I watched them compete back when they were in their primes. More than anything, I hope they're both healthy, happy, come out of this with their facilities intact. I've seen too many boxers that stayed around for too long that just didn't know how to get out of the game or took too much damage as a result. I don't want to see that for either of these guys. So that's my thoughts and picks on who I think wins between Roy Jones Jr. and Mike Tyson today, or rather, this coming Saturday. What do you think? Comment, like, share, subscribe. See you soon.